Hey guys, before we get this party started, I want to give a shout out to our friends at Live Nation Colorado and the Fillmore Denver. Without them, none of this would be possible. As you're listening to this, we have a huge docket coming up for October, but before September wraps, we still have Angels and Airwaves. We have Banks going down tomorrow night. Y'all need to be following them on social media at Live Nation CO and at Fillmore Den, DEN. They're giving away tickets, they're doing swag bags, and they're also doing all their announcements for shows that are coming down the pike for a huge October, November, and December as we celebrate Fillmore's 20th Circle Around the Sun. So be sure you're following along as we enjoy the end of this tour, I suppose. But we want to give them a shout out and say thank you again. So thank you, Live Nation. Thank you, Fillmore Denver. And for our listeners at home, be sure you're following those guys on social media for your chance to win free shit, as well as to be up to date with all the biggest names coming to town on a monthly basis. Without further ado, let's light the fires, kick the tires. Jovanini's Broken Italian episode coming at you now. Cheers.
The suppression of the use of marijuana and of the forces lurking behind it are the most important jobs this department is now engaged in. In 1930, the records on marijuana in the Washington office of the Narcotics Division scarcely filled a small folder like this. Today, they fill cabinets.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Coloradians, and everyone that's smart enough to listen from the outside.
It's one of the most amazing plants we've ever discovered.
The pot party, the trippers, the grasshoppers, the hip ones, all gathered in secrecy and flying high as a kite.
Please, I got really fucked.
All right. Well, 3, 2. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another week of No Vacancy Colorado's Stoned Appetit. With your host, as always, it's me, Kip, the stoned one, and the one that's even more stoned than myself. To my right, as always, is Chris Bama Byard. How are you today, Bama?
Dude, I'm doing great. We're at a place where I can't say that I've been, and I'm eager to learn more about.
Yep. So we're sitting down today. We're actually in one of the newer, I'm going to call it a speakeasy, but I feel I'm going to speak, that'll be incorrect, so I'll ask our guest. But we have Chef Justin from, it's Jovanina's Broken Italian.
Jovanina's Broken Italian.
I did that pretty well.
You did do it well. Well, you passed because it's not spelled even remotely like we spell it now, and it is actually my wife's name. And it's Gio and then goes on forever, so we just decided we're going to go ahead and spell this phonetically for a lot of different reasons.
And Jovanina is correct.
Jovanina is correct.
Fuck yes. Dude, I butcher so many last names, and I just called you Chef Justin because I didn't want to even, I was so focused and worried about the name of the restaurant.
I've been
so
called
proud of
much
myself.
worse. I'll take it.
Well, the podcast is early. Wait till we get done with our cocktails that we're sipping on. So we're down here at 1520 Blake Street. It's a progressive new Italian restaurant. Well, I won't even say it's new. It's been here, but there's a new concept that they've brought to the table. When I mentioned progressive, we're technically sitting in a wine cellar / a speakeasy as we record this before one of the more popular downtown happy hours kicks off.
Right.
So thank you so much, Chef, for joining us. We're excited to pick
Thanks
your brain. Yeah, you say that now, but an hour from now, you're going to really regret having us here. But as a regular listener, you know that we start every episode the same way. And so this is when I'm going to dive into the Everclear, and Chris is going to dive into the hard-hitting questions.
All right.
So thank you again, Chef.
All right, Justin. So are we a transplant or a native?
Transplant. Grew up in Indiana.
In Indiana.
So, yeah.
I don't know what to say about Indiana.
Flyover is generally what people say, but it's a great place to be from.
Hoosiers.
Exactly. Whatever that means. Nobody seems to know.
I got you. Well, how'd you end up here in Colorado?
Just lucky enough to have parents who loved to ski, and my dad had learned to ski in the military, and in Europe, like 50s. I mean, like crazy far back, and so fell in love with it. And because he was a pilot, we could get out here for free, and so I just fell in love with Colorado and couldn't wait to get out here. So I had the misfortune of going to school on the East Coast, but got out here as soon as I could.
Yeah. So how'd you get into the culinary scene?
Again, my folks, we traveled because it was cheap and they loved it. We traveled all over the world, and the first thing we did was find a cool new restaurant, or not new necessarily, but just something good that they had heard about. And so I just fell in love with it and kind of chased the dream, and had done an internship in Aspen when I was in college, and came out of college. And
was it at the Belly Up?
I wish. No, I think it was the Double Diamond.
Okay,
yeah,
there you go.
Way back. And then just heard of this little place called Telluride, and all the hippies who couldn't hang in Aspen anymore went to Telluride, and I said, well, that sounds kind of cool. So I went down there and spent about 20 years down there, and then came back up here.
So I want to know, first off, learning to ski in the Army, were they training y'all to be like a weapon in the future? I've seen Bond movies. I've seen Shane McConkey movies. That's an interesting way. Like, I've heard church camp before. I've never heard learn skiing growing up in as an Army family. So was it the Swiss Alps or?
It was mostly Germany. It was St. Anton is always, it comes up in my dad's recollections of the time. And of all things, he was in the Navy, but like they had bases in French Morocco and all these places. So that's where Naples. So that's where those guys would go. And it was cheap for them then, and what a great experience. So,
all right. So we are a Colorado podcast, so I was curious a little bit about the Europe. I was like, time out.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different. It's like Shaq was a basketball player who grew up in a military family, but you grew up and became a chef. So you went to school on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Realized, fuck that noise, those people suck, and then you wanted to come back west, huh? Or come west.
I did. I always knew I wanted to be in Colorado in the mountains. So.
And then so Aspen versus Telluride and Denver, fuck, marry, kill. Yeah, that's tough.
A good one.
Yeah, that is a good
I bet you didn't expect the hard-hitting questions here in minute 8.
Aspen was a great place to just learn and watch. Telluride was a fantastic place to spend your 20s and 30s.
So that's a fuck.
Yeah, and then, Denver has just... It's completely changed from when I moved here to Colorado 25 years ago. It's a completely different city. But it kept all the cool shit. And like the food scene here is amazing. The beverage scene here is amazing. Obviously the weed scene, music, the whole deal. It's an incredible city.
Well, you set us up for a perfect segue because that is, in fact, the 4 things that we care about here on this podcast. And that reminds me, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors over at Live Nation. They do everything under the sun. For those that remember, this weekend we'll have the Mile High Block Party down at Mile High Spirits. So win, holler at your boy as well. But for the record, Live Nation helps keep the party going here in Denver. So you didn't really answer the question, but it's like picking your...
I kind of got it. I think I got it.
Yeah, I feel like it's like picking against your children, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You did mention a little bit about how the Denver scene has been changing, especially from when you grew up here. What was the scene like when you got to Denver? Like, food-wise, did you feel like there was something missing? And then, like, after playing in the fields for a little while, you're like, oh, now I found a niche?
Well, when I really first started spending any real time in Denver, it was usually on my way somewhere else, right? Like coming from Telluride or Aspen to fly out, or go somewhere. And, oddly enough, especially when I was in Telluride, I'd only have like Sunday or Mondays off. And Denver has this, actually, it's a really cool tradition where a lot of the restaurants are closed Sunday, Monday. It's a very civilized way to run a restaurant, if you will. But like, there was not a lot open. It was a very, except for few folks here. I'll give shout outs to, guys like Kevin Taylor and Frank Bonanno. It was kind of a corporate, like, steakhouse town.
Right, people who had established themselves as groups.
Yeah, but those guys, were definitely front runners. And, like, you did not go past the tattered cover, right? Like, Low-High did not exist. God forbid, you just, Union Station, I remember walking through there just wondering when it was going to fall down. It's pretty amazing to see what's happened.
Yeah.
And, it's really unconventional. The food scene, there's kind of this weird line that goes kind of from Portland down through Denver, Austin, Nashville, where New Orleans, after post-Katrina, where a lot of young chefs have just reinvented themselves and reinvented the way we do restaurants in America. So it's pretty exciting to watch and be part of.
I couldn't agree more, and I feel like those are kind of all in that same sense of when I use the word progressive, and I've obviously killed that verb or that adjective already, but with the food scene, they're all kind of, it's like a fusion, and it's like, you mentioned the Frank Bonanas and those, it's almost not necessarily a change of the guard, but it's their proteges are now coming up with this mixed fusion, and those are the cities that are kind of popping. Obviously, not all of them are as just in, I guess, infrastructurally progressive, where there has been this large flock of folks to Denver because of the marijuana boom, and the craft beer scene is great here, and fit everything, all the above, yeah. And so with that has come with this new age and this kind of this new vibe of restaurants, and I feel y'all's restaurant here at JBI, as I'm going to call it for the rest of this, because as I continue to drink, I will fuck that word up. So here at JBI, y'all have kind of done that as well. So you've kind of changed the mold or shifted the paradigm on Italian food here in Denver also, and I kind of wanted to figure out, where'd you come up with that motif? How did you and your wife discover this alternative view to creating an Italian interaction cuisine?
Well, that's part of the tongue-in-cheek part of the broken Italian, because my wife is Italian and I'm from Indiana, and
yeah, you speak broken Italian.
I speak broken Italian, and I did live.
Does she speak broken redneck or country?
She's learning.
Yeah.
I did take her to her first Indianapolis 500 this year, which first and last probably.
Is she a basketball fan? That's kind of like a divorce papers, and if you're from Indiana or Gary,
I'm like the only kid from Indiana who can't play basketball. I'm the worst basketball player in the world. I don't know what it is.
This could be a hot take, but I feel like because it is, a lot of the kids that come out of Indiana can't play basketball outside of Indiana. So
that is true.
Unless it's Bobby Knight's, tutelage, they're sticking around Indiana because that's about the only place they can.
That's kind of it. Yeah.
I threw that out there.
I can't disagree with you on that.
All right, so we'll get back. So the idea behind JBI was obviously the mixed marriage, but
is our expression. So there's a lot of broken things about it, right? Like, not only is it spelled wrong technically, there is actually no J in the Italian language. It's
a hard J.
Yeah.
Or yog. It's a soft J, kind of like yogging.
I
just run for a period of time.
I don't have the cliches. I don't have an Italian grandmother that I'm going to say I'm using her recipes from.
Yeah, don't do that.
I'm not cooking her fucking recipes. I
Nobody
don't have
is.
one. But I did cook in Italy at a Michelin 3-star.
There you go.
I got that. So I'm
That's
proud
not a bad
of it,
card to have in your pocket.
Yeah, we got 3 Michelin stars while I was there, so it was probably a high point of my career for sure. Pretty amazing spots.
Please don't demean this podcast. If this doesn't make top 3, marriage, Michelin star.
There you go. Well, it wasn't my stars technically, but I was there.
Guest on this podcast.
Yeah. Shit, if I was the water boy for the team that won the national title, I still get a fucking ring.
Still get a
ring. It doesn't matter.
Shout out to Josh Gordon. The guy was in rehab. Exactly. He got a ring.
Or you could be Andrew Luck and not even play and get, how's that work?
Ooh.
Sorry, quick segue there.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Indiana.
I hate the Colts.
Oh, really? Are you a Bronco?
I'm a Bears fan. Bears fan for.
There's a lot of Indiana incest with
it was the only team we had forever.
Yeah, baseball is a jam as well.
Baseball.
Yeah, because and I guess if you've been out here for 25 some odd years, the Baltimore Colts were probably
It's still Baltimore to me.
Yeah.
Bunch of carpetbaggers from Baltimore. Can't really have that.
Whoa, we don't use the C word here on this episode. If you want to use C word on this, we like to use the watered down British version of a different verbiage, but we'll leave that for another day.
Yeah.
Our 5 minutes. It usually takes about 15 minutes for me to get into that word. Yeah.
So anyway, broken, food wise, drink wise, wine wise. Especially food. We love red sauce Italian, but we're cooking a little brighter, probably a little more fresh. We make all our own pasta here. We're experimenting a lot with different grains, both from Italy, locally, actually some amazing grains and flours out of all places, southern Arizona, Tucson, which are original grains planted by Spanish missionaries who came up through Mexico. Crazy story. But And
we're here for crazy stories.
Yeah, I mean,
does it include peyote?
You can make that. That would be an interesting addition to that.